My name is architect Chris Uloko. I'm a graduate of the University of Jos, BSc MSc. Studied architecture for 6 years as it was in those days. I never worked in any government agency. I started practice immediately. First working for a few architects in different towns, in Jos, in Makurdi, Benue State, where I come from, and in Lagos with a firm that I don't think exists anymore. So, and then in 1999, I actually finished in 1990. Yes, the master's degree in 1990. I served in the same town I schooled, and then in 1999, I moved back to Makurdi and started my private practice then. It's a small practice, started small and it's still small. It was never scaled. It's been small. We've done quite some interesting small projects, but keeps things going. We are happy with it. A lot of young architects have passed through my firm, especially those doing NYSC, and they learn and apply things in other towns that they go to, and I get a lot of recommendations. But so that's who I am.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
After you were done with school, what was the next thing you did? Or what was the next step before you began your career?
Yeah, you see, naturally, when you are done with school, there is this moment of anxiety that you normally go through. So I responded to that moment by seeking out big architects to work with, but I was never successful for some strange reasons. I applied first to the biggest firm in Jos where I schooled, and he turned me down. I also applied to so many other firms, and they turned me down. So what I did then was but that was before NYSC, before going for the NYSC. But after the NYSC, I served with Theo Lawson. He's currently the general manager of this Tafa Balewa Square. There's this Freedom Square in Lagos. He's a bit popular, a very wonderful architect. So I served with him, and then he retained me. That was in Jos. He had a firm then in Jos. And then somewhere along the line, he decided to get out of Jos and move back to Lagos. And I stayed back in Jos for a while. And that was the period I went through the most difficult times. I struggled with getting a new job. I struggled with getting commissions. I survived on minor briefs from small clients. And I learned all the processes from scratch without a mentor. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for
Yes.
that question. When you say without a mentor, how do you now navigate the journey?
Yes. Before I say that, I will not advise any young person to go the path I went, because one of the best things that can happen to a young professional, not just architect, is to get a mentor. Because I did mine more painstakingly that I wish for anybody to go through. Because some of the things that I learned the hard way would have been put at my disposal if I had a mentor. But nevertheless, I have this habit of compiling the list of all professionals in every town and rendering my services to them. So I started by doing that for architects, initially offering perspectives. Then back in the days, we were doing perspectives from first principles with our hands. So I started that way, and then I graduated from there and started doing working drawings for them as well. And then some of them started engaging me in supervision, and then I was doing that from firm to firm. So that's how I started. I didn't start on my own. I started by rendering services to bigger architects. Yes.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yes.
So the questions we are going to ask you today are questions that were sent in by students, graduates,
Okay.
even architects who are in the profession.
Yes.
And they are curious to know some of the answers to these questions. So we sent out this pool and we sent their questions. These are the questions we're going to be asking you.
Okay.
especially as with your position as the chair of the Public Relations Committee of the
Yes.
Nigerian Institute of Architects.
Yes.
So our first question, which came from a student, is saying, as an architect, must we all follow the traditional path of designing buildings? What if the pathway to entry for someone else who, after graduation, could be something else? Or what if after graduating, someone realizes they don't want to go into the traditional path anymore
Yeah.
and then tries to find a new area in the field? How do they go about it?
Yeah, very interesting question because it aligns with the research I'm currently on, a private research about the value chain of architecture. It's one of the things I'm looking at. The truth is that the architect's training is very profound, covers so many complex fields, and it is wrong to think that everybody should come out, practice, and become design consultants owning a firm. That I think is the reason why so many architects today are jobless and are struggling because we have a very big and robust value chain, and we are not exploiting even half of it. And so the question actually speaks to that need. And yes, in direct answer to the question, you don't have to follow that traditional path. There are so many paths, and there is a lot of room for creativity in identifying those paths that exist. I don't know if this forum will give me the opportunity to mention all the paths that are available, but I believe that in subsequent times I'll be publishing a report of all the different paths that are available for architects, especially young architects, to exploit, both in the design fields, in the general, when I say design field, I don't mean architecture field. And we are talking of design as a discipline of its own, which means that even in automobile design, in product design, in design, packaging designs, anything design is actually the purview of an architect. So you will find that there are openings there for architects to exploit, which is definitely not being exploited, you know. And then we also have a lot of roles to play in the construction field as well, not just as builders, but in unique spaces. You go to sites today, you hear of finishing architects, you hear of so many other things. And then even the products that are used in construction industry. If you go abroad, the architectural steel, architectural glasses, all these components that you see people manufacture for architects to use, the best of them are manufactured by architects themselves because they understand the performance requirements and all that. But I've not seen any architects writing business plan for that. Not that much in Nigeria. So there is a lot that we can do, but we need to structure it properly as an institute so we don't focus only on the traditional path. Yes.
I think there's not so much information on some of these career paths someone can go into, and it would be a great opportunity if you publish your research on that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes. That's the reason I'm even doing that research. Yes.
Thank you so much for that feedback. So this is from another student, and the person asks, I would like to know if how an architect can still be successful if the person chooses to major between architectural design, architectural engineering, and architectural technology.
Yes, strangely enough, architectural technology may actually be more lucrative than architectural design because, like I said, architectural technology is the field that manufactures components for architects. I had taught briefly in a architectural technology in a school, and because I am an expert in specification writing and I teach people a lot of specification writing, you find out that the skill of specification writing puts the architect at the driving seat of product manufacture, and that industry is a much bigger industry than the design industry, much bigger, but it's occupied by people who are not exactly architects, and some of them don't even know the actual needs of an architect. That is the reason why you find the foreign products are more attractive than the local ones, because the local ones, it's not they don't understand the level of detail and precision that the architect requires. And I'm sure I can challenge you on your building site, if you use any of the foreign window components, or you get a local window manufacturer who clearly will not be an architect. You'll understand why. So imagine an architect going into that space. So it's actually more lucrative. If it's money that is your problem, architectural technology is far more lucrative. Architectural engineering is not that defined in Nigeria as it is. And it's a field that will put you at crossroads with the engineering discipline, because the engineering profession may think that what are you an architect or an engineer, and they give you some stress. I don't know how it works. I've not um, done anything in that space, but architectural technology definitely is more lucrative. Unfortunately, all the people we are training in architectural technology want to be architects, want to be design architects. They want to design rather than explore the opportunities that exist in that field.
So I think one thing I would mention is how do they explore that opportunity, especially because I say this because I think in architectural technology schools,
Yes,
they are not taught in this line.
yes,
So how then can architectural technologists who graduate explore this field?
yes. It's a difficult part for them now, but part of what I'm also working on is to see how we can redirect schools of architectural technology to teach architectural technology. Now, the challenge is that that school was actually created to offer that service to architects. But the problem is, when it started, it architects themselves that started teaching architectural technology, and they were teaching what they knew. They were teaching architectural design. And so they were making graduates that were trained as architects and architectural design who have not seen the other side. So that needs to flip, and it hasn't flipped yet. So it's not really their fault. It's the fault of the policy that we have created, and that's why that problem is there. Now, because I teach specification writing, I know that most specification writers in design organizations are architectural technologists, because they are the ones who are best trained to understand how the components work, what they are, and how they can be sourced. So they are supposed to be writing those specifications. And the reason why you see specification writing is so unavailable in our practice culture today is because we have not yet trained that arm. Yeah, so it's a lot of work to be done. But I think that the Nigerian Institute of Architects has a bigger role to play in that process. Now, what the other part of the question is, how do they start? Everything starts with capital. Now, if they identify that as a viable venture, they need some kind of support. Unfortunately, the Nigerian Institute of Architects does not have entrepreneurial support, and that's something we need to look into. And I'm looking forward to that time when we will have so much resources that we can actually even create a funding option for any young entrepreneur that will get into that space. We are not there yet, but I think we can also make um, positions known to government funding agencies like Bank of Industry and the rest, so that they can support such ventures through our institute. That may be an option to look into. It's not something it's not a conversation going on in the NIA yet, but I intend to initiate that conversation somewhere in the future. Yes.
That would be a great thing to do, especially as young graduates come out and they are thinking of what's next to do after
Yes.
architecture.
If you have handled complex projects before and you see component vendors coming to market certain components to you, and you ask them some specific technical questions, and then they start scratching their head. They just know that that material is good, but they can't tell you exactly what makes it good, what are the properties. They can't speak scientifically and technically about those products. That is the problem. It would have been better if an architect was running that show as well, because it's our turf. It's our top, and that's the reason the Bauhaus started by creating workshops and those kind of systematic training. In fact, most of the sophisticated furniture we import from other countries are designed and manufactured by architects, but not in Nigeria. You know, they understand anthropometric proportions. They understand so many things that you as an architect understand. But any local furniture maker, once you sit on the furniture, you know that there's something is missing. So these are areas that we need to go into. And I want to promise the young architects that it's an area I'm going to take as a project moving forward.
Thank you so much,
Yes.
sir, for that feedback. This brings me to the next question, especially when you mention the HND holders or technologists who want to be architects. So someone asked, I am a holder of national diploma and higher national diploma from a polytechnic in Nigeria. While in school, we were told that the path for HND graduates to become a fully registered architect with NIA and ARCON was to write and pass a couple of examinations, including NIA Finals 1, NIA Finals 2, and PPE. But upon graduation since 2010, I have not seen any advertisement for any examination eligible for HND graduates. I do not know how to go about applying for any of these examinations. Please, can you put me through on how to go about any of these examinations?
Okay. That brings us to the heart of the recent problems we've been dealing with in the practice of architecture, which some people have termed the NIA ARCON imbroglio. You know, in the past, we had the NIA conduct the exams for licensure, and ARCON did the licensing. But somewhere along the line, something happened, which I may not go into detail now. And then ARCON decided that they need to begin to handle licensure, and the NIA has no business, no, handle the exams, and NIA has no business dealing with that. Now, unfortunately, that action contravened the Fundamental Architects Act, which is the law establishing it. And even though I do not object to any of them handling the exam, after all, we are all architects. But I think that if that is the path we want to follow, the first thing to do is to amend the act that gives the NIA the responsibility of conducting the exams. Now, it is that problem that created the challenge that the young man is facing. And I apologize for that challenge on behalf of all the parties concerned. It's something that bothers us as well. And that's the reason why the NIA in the past years have tried to solve that problem by going into some kind of memorandum with ACON so that at least we can conduct exams much together as a team, so people don't just graduate from school and wait endlessly. However, we are not yet there. We still need to get the facts down. Either we want to amend the act so that we leave the examination processes strictly in the hands of ACON, and then we focus on other things, or we continue with what we are doing, conduct the exams and let ACON license. These are very sensitive areas that I may not go into more details than this, but that's what has affected him. Yes, I personally graduated from a school that at the time I graduated was not accredited by the NIA. So I went through a very painstaking process. In fact, most people, when I tell most people that it took me 16 years after graduation before I became licensed, people don't believe. But I insisted that I must go through the process. I went, I failed, I passed, I went through everything. And sometimes I got my form signed by a mentor, by what do you call it, a referee, and then only to be told that the person who signed my form has not paid his dues, and then I have to start the process all over again. But I went through that because I understand what it means to have a license to practice. So it's unfortunate that now the problem has become more complicated because it's not as straightforward as it used to be. So even if we do go ahead and get somebody to write those exams prior to the final exams, it's going to be difficult marketing that to ACON because we don't have that kind of handshaking that we had in the past. But I believe it's something that can be surmounted, definitely surmounted, and we intend to do that as soon as possible. Yes.
So then, as I was thinking, currently both the professional body and institute have already started organizing exams for young architects
Yes.
of recent. Well, for someone now who does not have an idea of as an as a HND graduate or anything, and how are they going to go through the process? Is, is there still a need for NIA Finance want to come in, especially as you took it in your time? Or is this solely for those who graduated through the university?
Let me be frank with you. If you have an HND, your pathway to licensure is to get yourself a master's degree, maybe longer than a BSc holder. Do you understand? That is the truth. There is no other way. Either you go abroad and do a master's degree, or you find out the schools that can take you to a master's program through a postgraduate diploma. I understand there are some schools doing that because I do have some HND graduates who are now licensed as architects who went through some pathway. That's the only pathway for HND holders for now. Now, the big question is the conversations that are going on in that space. They border on the parity between the HND and the BSc. And the argument often brought forward is the fact that HND and BSc, they learn the same things in school. I do agree with them. However, the people who are thinking the other side of the argument, they are also making a valid point. They're saying that the entry requirements to study HND is less than the entry requirements to study a BSc. Do you understand? And you know that even to pass professional exams, you still need to show your O level degree. So if you have gone to study at a HND and you didn't have up to that minimum requirement for a degree, you are likely to have a problem unless you go back and do O levels. So because the entry requirements for HND is not the same as the entry requirements for a BSc, that gives valid ground for anybody who says that those two qualifications are not pairs. And these are the areas we need to fix. That means that we have to now amend that policy and say, okay, for architecture, entry requirements for a polytechnic should be the same minimum requirements for a degree. That way, we can now accept those two degrees as equals. So these are actually technical things, but they keep cropping up whenever these conversations are had. And the actual problem with the HND BSc dichotomy is not a problem of the architecture profession. It's a problem of the educational policy of Nigeria when they set up National Universities Commission on the one hand and the National Board for Technical Education on the other hand. So even at that level, they are still struggling with the issue. The fact is that you don't see people going to polytechnics to study medicine. You don't see people going to polytechnics to study law. And if they do study a course in law, it's not a course that will make them call them to the bar. If you see somebody studying a medical field in a polytechnic, it's likely to be a service field like laboratory technologies and anesthesiologists and field that doesn't make you a general practitioner. But in architecture, we created the course as a technical support for architecture. You understand? But because we didn't clearly define that curriculum, we have created yes, a qualification that now seeks to be at par with the master's degree holder of the architect, which is not appropriate. So these are the things we need to look into and we need to fix.
So we're grateful to have you on our Corner, and it's a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.